going on, everyone? Chris with Journals, Comics, and Pop Culture. This is our top 10 hottest selling comics of the week, our weekly video series brought to you by PopCultureZone.com. Before we get into this week's top 10 books, don't forget to check out PopCultureZone.com's. Their links are below. Check them out if you're interested in getting your hands on some awesome exclusive and incentive variants at affordable costs, CGC slabs, and of course all different kinds of pop culture items, including toys and statues. And if you're buying raw books, they ship at a flat rate fee of only $4.99. Pop Culture Zone is also on eBay, where they still hold a 100% customer feedback rating with over 8,000 ratings this year alone. Those links are below. Check them out and make sure you follow them on eBay as well.
What Chris does here, he dishes out the top 10 hottest comics of the week based off of Cover Price's data. That list is delivered on a Monday. Our show is on a Sunday. Chris likes to pick the 3 most interesting books from that list and see how they did in this past week. He'll give them props or flops. We're just going to jump right into it. In the top 10 hottest comics of the week are, at number 10, we have Amazing Spider-Man 265, the first appearance of Silver Sable. At number 9, we have Star Wars number 2. I believe that's the first appearance of Obi-Wan and Han Solo. Correct me if I'm wrong. At number 8, we have Point One, the Nick Bradshaw variant, the first Sam Alexander, a.k.a. Nova. Number 7, we have JLA, Avengers Hero Initiative trade paperback. A lot of ugliness with this, which we should probably talk about. At number 6, we have Ghost Rider 31, the first full appearance of the Midnight Suns. At number 5, we have VOLTRON number 1, the first appearance of VOLTRON in comic books. At number 4, we have Secret Wars 2. Number 3, the first appearance of Beyonder in human form with that sweet, like, parachute pants. Look, he's dope. He's dope. At number 3, we have Point One, the cover A, the first Sam Alexander. At number 2, we have Nova number 1, the first appearance of Nova, a.k.a. Richard Rider. And number 1, we have New Avengers number 40, first appearance of Varanke, the Skull Queen. Lots of rumors swirling about that with Secret Invasion coming. All right, Chris. So there we have it. You have 10 books, 3 on the list that you're going to give props or flops to.
They're on the list. We had a lot of carryover from last week, too.
Sure did.
So I talked about some of these other books the prior week. They stayed on. So I didn't want to talk about those again, although some of them are some solid books. But let's just go into my number 3. And Drew, this goes a little bit to what you were talking about a little earlier on. My number 3 pick is VOLTRON number 1. Talk about properties that we enjoyed when we were kids, ended up coming into the comic books. I still have mine from when I was a kid. So happy to see some VOLTRON making the list. I am a huge VOLTRON fan. Doesn't mean I'm just going to automatically give it props, though. We'll get to that after we analyze these numbers. Let's break this down. Now, remember, we're looking at last week's numbers when they hit the top 10. And then I'm giving you numbers current as of right now, this moment. So when it made the top 10, it had 154% upward trend in sales. When this list, sale of $665. This week's high was $600. It was a listing on eBay for $699. Best offer accepted at $600. That is a 10% decrease in value, but as I always say when I talk about 9.8s or I talk about highs, don't get so focused on these highs as if they are a, total scope of what this book is doing on the market, okay? Sometimes highs can be outliers and they can be very misleading, but we'll move on. Now, the high sale prior to the announcement. Oh, yeah, by the way, the announcement was VOLTRON being optioned for a live action film. So that's what brought this book to this list and what, spiked these sales up. Now, prior to the announcement, a 9.8 sold for $500. That was back in January of this year. Now let's look at raw books. Keep in mind that average raws, take them with a grain of salt because you're not pertaining to any specific grade. So average raw can be skewed because you might have some lower grade, you might have some high grades. And you know how we find averages? We add up all the sales dollar amounts and divide it by the units sold. So when this book hit the top 10 list last week, the average raw was $63. This week, as of today, the average raw is sitting at about $75. It's a 19% increase in value. So what is my take on this book, and do I give it props or flops? For one, as I said, I'm a huge VOLTRON fan. I am so excited about this live action property happening. I am a huge Transformers fan. Now, the comic book market was a bit of a different beast, 15 years ago now when the first Transformers film came out. I thoroughly loved the first Transformers film. Everyone after that, in my humble opinion, got worse and worse and worse until Bumblebee, because Michael Bay didn't direct that one. But we're not going to talk about Michael Bay, but I'm bringing up Transformers because even though a lot of diehard Transformers fans had issues with some of those live action films, they still helped catapult Transformers, the franchise, in so many ways. And I'm not talking about the dollar numbers for the films at the box office. It brought a younger generation into Transformers. I know, because my kids were right there doing it. My kids would watch Transformers movie like every other day. They would memorize the lines. They would play with their Transformers toys, and then we'd go to the comic book store and buy the comics. I absolutely think that this VOLTRON film can do that. I am skeptical, though, because if it doesn't have the right money behind it, the right funding behind it, and the right people behind it, it can become a Power Rangers movie.
No.
Right now, and even though Michael Bay's films have elements that are like frustrating to diehard Transformers fans, they are still blockbuster films for certain reasons. I might not agree with it, but certain elements allow them to work and be successful and not be seen as like that Power Rangers movie, right? So I'm concerned with that. So now we got to ask the question, props or flops? I'm still going to give this book props. I don't think these numbers, and if you look at the average raws too, these numbers haven't increased a huge amount since this announcement. I mean, a $500 sale in a 9.8, this book was still a solid book. And I think the real thing we need to look at in terms of the long-term value of this book kind of goes back to what Drew was saying in the beginning of the show. These properties from like the 80s that weren't necessarily originally comic book properties, like your Transformers #1, like your Thundercats, and all these comics, they're heating up right now for other reasons outside of being optioned or getting some live action going on here, right? They are becoming vintage nostalgia. And I think that right there is going to play well into this book long term, regardless of what happens to the film. But keep in mind, guys, be cautious. I always say this. Be cautious of investing in 9.8s. The 9.8 market is crazy right now. And just be patient if you're out there buying raws. But this does have the ability to swing really hard one way to the next if this film comes out and it does flop. But long term, I have a lot of hope and promise for this book.
Before I sneeze, Drew, your thoughts on VOLTRON #1? Thank you.
I agree, especially like on the raw side, because this book, it wasn't overly valuable, so it's really accessible still, and I think that's something that a lot of people are really looking for in the market right now, with all the other blue chip keys books that are always crazy popular and hot, just continuing to move further and further away from people's budgets. Things that kind of come up in the market like this that can still be easily attained, and you can still go back and you still have that connection to it, when you were a kid. Like VOLTRON doesn't mean a lot to me. I'm more of a Transformers age. I was just too young to catch VOLTRON. But the other properties like Thundercats that I loved, that was my experience when that book started to take off. So it's just the next chapter in that nostalgia book. Now the people who were Voltron fans can start digging in those back issue bins and digging this thing out, because I think I've got one, but it's pretty trash, but still somebody who loves that book and wants to spec on it a little bit, they can still pick up a low grade copy of it for $5 or $10, and that's good for the market, I think.
Now, Drew, you're kind of I know which way you lean towards in terms of like let's say Thundercats versus Voltron. But that being said, where do you see these books landing? Do you see Voltron coming anywhere near that Thundercats #1?
Honestly, I don't know what the print run looks like, because I know the Star books tend to be a little bit short run compared to some of the main titles, and I just haven't done the research on Voltron to really know what the initial print run was, how many of them are out there, to really be able to make an educated guess at this point. I know it's not something, it's not like I'm swimming in long boxes of it every time I go to a show or something, so I don't think it's something that's super common. But I would say, depending on the energy that the fan base has for it, it could be comparable, especially if we get closer to actual production of something. I know sometimes we get these flashes in the pan when something gets optioned, and then you never hear anything else about it. So if this is step 1, if we get to step 2 and step 3, at that point, I think it could definitely get to where, especially in the higher grades, where it breaks into the $150, $200 range if that demand does materialize.
I think this is going to be a key book coming. I really do. I think there's so much love for Voltron. I love Voltron just as much as I love Thundercats. For me, so maybe I'm speaking from my heart, especially being a kid at that time watching this stuff. But I can't imagine this book not kind of continuing the momentum. That being said, Voltron has been thrown around, as well as Thundercats, a lot as, they're moving forward with productions. I remember back in the day, after Tobey Maguire did his first Spider-Man film, he was pushing for Voltron. It was, Tobey Maguire's on board for Voltron. It's going to happen. I remember back in the day, Brad Pitt was going to be a Lion-O for Thundercats. Here we are. We still haven't seen a movie from either of those. So again, I would wait till this dips, because this book will dip. It will dip. You're going to stop hearing about any kind of news on this or what have you.
If it dies in
the
water.
If you really want this book, it would probably be best to wait on that. But I see a lot of value in this book, and I see the growth potential going forward being high. That's my take on that right there. All right, Chris, you have another book to talk about. What do you got?
All right, guys, my number 2 pick on the list. Excited about this one. Nova #1.
Whoa.
That's right. Nova #1, the first appearance of Nova, aka Richie Rider. So a Bronze Age book that I have been talking about for over 3 years now. Back when I had a little YouTube channel that I wasn't even doing anything with. All right. Back in the early days when I didn't even take it seriously, I was like, folks, this right here is one of those affordable Bronze Age books that I see having great potential. Now, let's look at what it's been doing when it hit the top 10, 131% upward trend in sales. Last week, when it hit the top 10 once again, it had a high CGC 9.8 of $3,000. That's money. This week's high for a 9.8 dropped down to 2,700. All right, that's a 10% decrease in value, but I'm going to say it again. Don't get too caught up on the high sales. There's very minimal on the market at any given time. And I say this all the time. It just takes 1 or 2 people to see that book at that moment, to have that money in their pocket right then. I just got paid, or I got my taxes back, or whatever the case may be. And they're up there at 2 a.m. on eBay bidding it out, and it just happens to go up a few $100s, right? So don't get too caught up on that. But this is one that I want everyone to look at. The high sale prior to this announcement, $2,600, and that was back in May of last year. Now, that was when the market was peaking for a lot of books. A lot of money was going into a lot of key books, last summer. This book did drop down. It averaged sales under 2,000 leading into, the fall and winter of 2021 and coming into the winter of this year. It was rolling under that $2,000 mark. So now that we got the Nova announcement, it's spiked back up again. But it doesn't concern me that much that it hasn't gone up way past where it was at its high previously. So something to pay attention to. Let's look at the raws. When it hit the top 10, the average raw was hitting 145, where this week the average raw is 170. A little bit of an upward trend of 17%. All right. Props or flops? Similar thing here, folks. I'm giving it props, but and this may seem to be a trend, Jeff, Andrew, when we started doing this segment like this a few weeks back, anytime I give a book props, I still have to tell you all to be cautious. Just because I give a book props doesn't mean I'm telling you to have the green light to go spend a bunch of money, go buy it in a 9.8 for $3,000. Because as I always say too, we're not here to tell you to buy anything. I'm just giving you guys my opinion on this. Again, I think this is a long-term investment. Bronze Age key Marvel books are here for the long term. Anything that has MCU spec value added to it is, kind of it's an added, icing on the cake sort of thing, especially if you invested in it prior and you want a short-term flip, maybe, right? So as we all know, anytime we get announcements like this, it allows these books to become a bit more volatile with more ebb and flow on the market. Once we get a trailer, I bet this book is going to start hitting even higher numbers. When we get a trailer or a casting, when we get
any news,
and then the show is going to come out, and depending on how good it comes, how it's received, it could keep going up. But if it's not well received, or if it comes out and then we don't see Nova again for a while, it might not do this, but it might cool off. We take our money and our focus elsewhere. Look at what's happening with Iron Man 55. That book really cooled off, and now it's going back up, and that's because it is a early Bronze Age book with some key first appearances that is going to be a solid investment long term. I say the same thing for this. This is a props book all the way, and I really hope that if you all were interested in collecting in Cosmic Marvel, Bronze Age characters, whatever the case may be, I really hope that if you guys have been here collecting for the last few years, that you bought it before the announcement happened a couple weeks back, because you would have saved a lot of money.
Yep.
If you buy it right now, again, personally, I would stay away from the 9.8s. You're taking more risk. You might see it drop down here and there, but I wouldn't be too upset if you think you overpay, because 5, 10 years from now, even 15, 20 years from now, you'll probably look back and be like, wow, I paid that much for it and was mad about it because now it's worth like 5, 6 times the amount.
Agreed. And before, Drew, I get to your comment, I'm enjoying this right now, that we're actually getting people giving their props or flops. So guys, please give us the props or flops for any of the books that Chris brings up. I'm enjoying that trend, seeing you guys all give your opinion. I'm enjoying another alumnus here, Automatic Comics, just waving hello. Hello. Good to see you. All right, Drew, your thoughts on Nova #1.
I've been, I'm in the same boat with Chris. I've been talking about this thing for a long time, and who I'm really happy for is the person who bought a 9.8 copy on January 8th for $1,650. There'd be nobody happier in the Nova world right now than that guy. Because I pulled up GPA. I'm a data nerd. So, the 2021 average over 56 sales was $1,771. So this guy bought this copy for less than last year's price.
Nice.
Wow.
So congrats to that guy. Now I remember when Nova was $100 book, and then it was a $150 book, and now I think it's going to be a $300 book, a $350 book. Just imagine what happens if we get, something as simple as what we got at the end of Eternals with Blade.
Yeah.
We get something for Nova like that at the end of Guardians of the Galaxy 3. Just that little hint in a post-credit scene. I mean, just light the fuse and walk away. It's gonna go sky high. But no, I can't really add much to that. I've been a proponent of this book for a long time, and happy to finally see the market coming back to it, because I feel like it's a book a lot of people kind of leaned in on a while ago, but then they kind of got tired of it, or they lost faith in it as it was kind of holding steady, or even slowly kind of drifted down a little bit while everything else was blowing up. And now I think the people who stayed the course and held on to it, or came into it when it was in that kind of just lull or holding pattern, are going to be happy with what they see in the next few months and years with it.
Agreed. Feige has been saying for years Nova will be coming. Feige has teased it's going to be both Richard Rider and Sam Alexander via comic book on video. So he has the words coming out of his mouth saying this. Here we are right now with the reports that they're starting to move forward with this. And yeah, I'm glad I got my copy. I got it graded too. It's within arm's reach. Okay, sure. You got it. You guys want to see it? Drew, pipe down, please. Okay, I'll show it to you.
It's show and tell.
I know you're so desperate. It's not even fresh from the comic shop at all, but I got it in 8.5. I got it graded, so the my copy was an 8.5. I'm happy with that, man.
Last sale was $248.
Yeah, I got it for way back before any of this news made the rounds. So, anyways, I'm all about it. I'm a props on that too, Chris and Drew. So, that being said, I think a lot of people are props for Nova. I gotta say, comic chameleon.
Comic chameleon.
That is a clever name. Well played. Well played. Also, Drew, you got some props yourself in the comics. Comic Toby 420. Something about Como Comics that makes me want to go and score a touchdown. I think it's in your. Yeah. I think you could totally be an analyst for college football, maybe even the NFL. I really do. You have that voice, that timbre.
Oh.
It's excellent. Don't change. Continue to be you, please.
All
right. Moving on, Chris.
With the deep tones.
You do have the deep tones. Yeah, absolutely. Chris,
that was good. I like that though, Jeff. You're right.
I'm right about what?
About Como, man, and
well, it was Comic Toby too that said that as well.
Oh yeah.
Can I throw
anyways, Chris, your third pick here. What do you got? Props or flops?
Nova? More about Nova?
One more thing.
Yeah.
Look downstream from 1, because issue 2 is already jumping up. There are other books in that title that you need to be looking at beyond number 1 right now, because they're still in back issue bins. Everybody's grabbing the 1 and marking it up, but there's still money to be made downstream from issue 1. So that's
100%. There's a lot out there. Justin, aka Saul Marshall, Nova 11 is the first meeting of the Novas. There's also there's a Nova 5. I can't remember which series that was, but where they physically are in the same space. But by the way, Dave collects. Yeah. What's happening, hot stuff?
I just sold this nice, fine looking book for $3. I mean, it's not a key in the series, but yeah, guys, it's a short run with a lot of fun books too.
Definitely. All right, Chris.
That's great stuff.
It is. That's a nice looking book too. Chris, your third pick of the week. Props or flops? What do you got?
My number 1 coming in. New Avengers, number 40. This was number 1 on the list. And how to go with it. So let's break this down. There's a lot of here to take in, folks. This is the first appearance of Adenke, the Scroll Queen. Rumor has it that Emilia Clarke will be playing this character in the Secret Invasion show. Now, folks, keep in mind, it is just a rumor. We don't know still who she will be playing. Okay. Let's look at what the book has been doing with these numbers here. When it hit the top 10, 154% upward trend in sales with a high with the high CDC 9.8 of $392. This week's high, $385. But keep in mind, folks, that was like late night last Sunday. So it was mere hours after cover price creates the list. And then there was no 9.8 sold for all the rest of this week. Now, get this. No graded sales prior to 2021. In all of the sales but one, there was none prior to December of 2021, except there was, I believe, I think it was a 9.2 or a 9.4 that sold in like February or March of 2021. Other than that, though, in every other grade, which was 9.4, 9.6, and 9.8, there's none other in lower grades. The only ones sold happened just over the last 4 months. There's only 29 9.8 on the census. I'm going to come back to that, but let's just review the raw averages first. When it hit the top 10, it was averaging about $39 raw. This week, about $31 raw. That's a 21 decrease in value. But remember, raws are taken with a grain of salt because you have different grades in there, and they're not all the same equal value. But the average raw before the rumor of her playing this character, Emilia Clarke, $16. So you could see that this basically doubled in value in what we were paying for it raw when this rumor happened. Now that's pretty substantial, although, paying $30 to $40 for this book isn't outlandish or crazy or anything like that, right? Now let's go back to the graded 9.8s and this 29 copies on the census. I've said it many times as of late. We can't sit here and focus on census count and look at 29. This thing is rare. I just did a video about it actually yesterday, guys. Not this book, another book, but go check that out on my channel. We can't sit here and say there's only 29 CGC 9.8s on the census. This book is rare, therefore it is worth a ton of money. I'm going to tell you what this census count means. And again, folks, this is just my opinion, but I'm deducing it from, taking all the variables that I have at hand and hypothesizing with that information. Here it is. Here we go. The reason there is only 29 9.8s on the census, the reason why there was none sold before 2021, the reason why there was only one sold even before 4 months ago is because of this. Nobody cared about sending this book in to get graded until we got an announcement. Does anybody know at the top of their head when the Secret Invasion announcement was? Was that at the 2019?
That was the same time they announced Moon Knight, the same time they announced Ironheart.
Yeah, they dropped that whole slate all at once.
Yeah, that was 2019, right?
We did it. Yeah, it was 2020 because we were.
Yep, you're
early
right.
on in comic book canon history.
Comic book canon. That's right. There you go. So there you go. The timing adds up perfectly. So when that announcement happened, everyone that wants to flip comic books, speculate and flip comic books, said, okay, let's see what might pertain to a Secret Invasion TV show. And you get anything that might have a first appearance of a character that might show up in the show. You get people that now start sending this book into CGC. And now we're seeing it happen because we got the Emilia Clarke casting, we got the rumors, and now the rumor is making headway. And I'm telling you, that's, again, I can't prove it as fact, but that is my assumption and educated hypothesis of why we saw none of these graded books on the market prior to just a few months ago. So, props or flops for this book. While I don't think that this book is necessarily a horrible investment or a horrible book to buy, look, hey, even for $30-something, I mean, like I said, that's not a crazy amount of money where, you're going to be mad if it drops off. And it could have potential in the future to slowly increase. It is a modern book. I'm sure there's a lot of high grades out there. And this is my problem with this book. And this goes back to the census. Do you know how many people might have been having a copy or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 of this book sitting? How many dealers, how many flippers? And now that this rumor is coming true, how many people are now sending this off to CGC? Doing the 9.8, paying the $5 for the pre-screen, sending all their 9.8 potential copies so they can try to flip it and make money off this book. This book has the potential to, whenever, I don't know what CGC's turnaround times are looking like these days. I don't know, 3 months with the fast track, 6 to 10 months, submitting them with standard, the standard tier. In a few months from now, when all the people that are submitting these to flip, they come back, that 29 on the census might double. We might have 60 on the census. It might triple to 90 on the census. And then, as I've said before in different scenarios, at that point, it might come to fruition that Emilia Clarke is not playing Berenke and is a different character. And this character isn't even in the show or whatever the case may be. And it might be her. She might come in and play this character. I don't know. It could keep the book holding. But because of all the uncertainty, because I know people are looking at this book and they're looking at the census count and they're skewing it and they're looking at it in a way that doesn't tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth, I have to give this book flops. I just, there's too much technicalities involved to where this book, it's not enough for me to get behind this book and say, especially in those 9.8 values. No way $300, $400 for this book in a 9.8. It's just absolutely nuts. So flops for me.
I have comments with Drew. You're our guest and you're smarter than I am. Please.
Well, I bought a couple books yesterday just for the business. And that was one of them.
Nice.
Oh, wow.
But here's the deal. I've been buying this book out of like $1 and $3 and $5 bins for years. So I've got a couple of them. The other book that kind of goes hand in hand with this one that I like that is not really on anybody's radar, or at least nobody's talking about it, I don't think right now, is Secret Wars 3, where she reveals herself. I think that's a great book as well. But this one, the dealer is a smart dealer. They already were kind of on the trend. So they actually had it marked 20. So I wound up probably paying more than, it's definitely the most expensive one I've got. But when I made a deal for $50 for the pair of books I'm holding, I think you'll see why I didn't care, because that's I got with it for that $50. So I still kind of like this book. I think it's one of those measured spec books. Again, if maximum return on investment is your thing, you've already been buying this book, like I have for the last few years. If you want to jump in at this point and you want to spend a couple $100 and really make a heavy play on this book, don't go for the first print like this one. There's a second print that's a wraparound cover that has Virenki on it. That's the money book for this issue. So it's come up a time or two, and it actually has more volume sales-wise, just looking at GPA here, than the first print does.
Interesting.
With 10 sales in the last 12 months compared to 8 for the first print, and running right around $450 for it. So that would be my recommendation if you wanted to throw money in at it. But I think there's probably better investments to be made overall. Now, if you can find it in a discount bin still, I think it's worth picking up. If you can turn $1, $3, or $5 into $20 or $30 like that in the next few months.
Sure. That's the way to do it. And I'm a little conflicted here because, and I know this isn't the game we play, but if I were to compare this book to the two other books, no question, it's a flop, right?
Oh yeah.
However, but that's not what we do here. We have to look at each one separately. And the thought process that I have, well, I can't justify buying this for the numbers that were up on that slate. Exactly what you said, Drew, digging through the boxes, trying to find it for anywhere $3 to $10, what have you, sure. Mm-hmm. But Amelia Clark has staying power. It is a rumor. It's not, it hasn't been confirmed. So I got to give flops because I wouldn't pay those prices to purchase this book. I would definitely try and get this book if I could at $10 and under is basically what I'd have to say.
Yeah,
that's
yeah. And again, I want to make it clear that this isn't a bad book. It's a very fun and interesting book that can play out very well in the MCU. But my big concern too, and like you said, Jeff, with the value that it's going for. We have to, I always say, don't get caught up on print run. Well, a lot of even Bronze Age books had higher print runs than modern books. So, but when you talk about 9.8s and those higher grades and how modern books have more potential to have more of a mass, more higher grades, have more potential for 9.8s. You're talking about, and here's another thing though. You don't know what the MCU is going to do with this character.
Yeah.
If they're going to really like villainize her, or if because you already saw how they changed the dynamic with the scrolls. So, that can be a different thing too. When you talk about the staying power, I agree. But what is that staying power going to look like? And I'm very concerned with, especially with graded books, with the fact that let's come back and talk about this book a year from now and see how many are on the census. And if demand is going to keep up to, how many potentially are going to be there in the next coming months in years. And even if the character plays out well and the raw books keep a solid value, it's like so many more 9.8s can flood the market that the price never goes anywhere, simply because the demand just doesn't increase as much as the supply. And, you never know. Too many question marks for me.
Yeah, I think in the short term, the supply will outrun the demand for sure, because we're still a ways out from that.
Yeah.
And even with the delays, if I've got a couple of copies of this, there's somebody out there who's got 10 or 15 or 20. And I made a comment in the chat earlier, there's probably 10 times the current census count on its way to Dallas right now, or already sitting there. So it's definitely one of those that I think I wouldn't be putting money in the slabbed one right now for sure.
100%. Great advice right there. I think, again, with context though, if you feel it's worth it to you, don't listen to any of us. If you feel like you're going to spend that money and it's something you want, it's right for you then. If it's coming to Chris, Drew, or myself, we wouldn't do that. But that's our opinion. And again, we really want to kind of reinforce that. We're not here to tell you what to do with your money. People ask us what we would do with ours. That's what we say. Anyways, that's props or flops, guys. You guys did a fantastic job participating. Starting to enjoy this segment even more now with you guys telling us props or flops. We'll have a brand new list next week. Chris will dissect it with the 3 most interesting books from that list, as well as props or flops.